Hi there, and welcome back. My name is John. I've been a type 1 diabetes patient for the past 45 years. I currently work as an emergency medicine physician in New Hampshire, but I spent about 15 years taking care of all kinds of folks with diabetes in upstate New York. I love diabetes. I've learned a lot from it. And back in June, I started this video series to help increase diabetes awareness. In fact, today my shirt is the Dead Pancreas Society. Of course, I'm a big Robin Williams fan, so I have to appreciate the irony and provide some diabetes awareness support. We also like to educate, we share ideas, we try to have fun. Please disregard this for medical advice, or at least if you're going to take any medical advice from here, talk to your primary care provider or your endocrinologist for their guidance. I don't want to lead anyone astray. I want to have fun. I want to increase awareness. I would love to educate. I hope you gain something here that's helpful, but please make sure your care team's involved. So today's topic is going to be a little bit more personal. I've gotten away from the personal stuff that we started with as we drove down how insulin works, how some of the type 2 medications work, how the nasty complications can affect us and how we can avoid those. Now I'd like to get a little bit back into the me of the story. Not that any of you want to hear about me, but hopefully my experiences can provide some hints and some helpful ideas for you. So, give you a little background. Type 1 diabetes for 45 plus years, okay? This topic will apply to type 2 as well. However, I'll point out the variations that you need to pay attention to. So what we're going to look at today is something that's come up multiple times in all of our discussions, and that's diet. What do I do that makes things work? Why do I say things work? Well, number one, I love this disease. I thoroughly enjoy diabetes. It's kind of freaky and weird to say. I'm not sure I would be happy without it. I know at some level I would be. It'd certainly make life a lot easier, but you know what? If it was easy, everybody would do it. So I have great respect for the disease, but I live my life to the fullest and really am a big believer of carpe diem, back to the old Robin Williams, and, really making the most of every situation. I'm not about to let diabetes slow me down, but I certainly will respect it and heed its warnings that it is so sometimes not so gentle in giving us. Anyway, I love diabetes. I'm a little bit weird like that. I have been over 45 years. In fact, this coming January, I'll hit 46. I essentially have zero complications. I've had some cardiac issues, which all of the professionals believe is more genetic related. I've had a few micro areas of retinopathy on the periphery, the outside of the eyes. Nothing that ever required any treatment or any changes. I think I've been seeing my ophthalmologist every year for the past 45 or so years. So for those of you that remember some of our prior conversations, when the ophthalmologist is saying, I'll see you in a year, that's a really good thing. So no neuropathy. My feet are incredibly sensitive. No issues with pain, numbness, or anything like that. Kidneys are in great shape. No microalbumin or any of those issues. So I'm blessed in that I have not had to really deal with complications personally. Certainly helped many patients through them. So today I'm going to focus not on my medications, although I need to bring that in just for your own safeguard and your own understanding, but predominantly on my diet and how I do things. So just so you know, my method of control as a type 1 is I use the FIASP, the faster acting insulin aspart insulin, in the 780G Medtronic insulin pump system. So I have a continuous glucose monitor that I wear on my arm. You've seen it in one of these arms, this arm. You've seen it in many videos. And I have the insulin pump that doesn't really do a basal rate, but adjusts microbolusing based on sensor data. So at any point, I can look at my pump or my phone and get a nice graphical representation of not only where my blood sugar has been, but which way it's going. I can react to the trend and make necessary changes. Not only that, I can review the past, probably up to 48 hours, of what the pump has been doing for changes. This pump system is designed to learn from you. So you actually wear the pump with the sensor, not in what we call auto mode, for about a week or 2 weeks, just so it kind of learns your response. How do you respond to a unit of insulin? How do the carbohydrates impact you? Of course, this is all relying on you providing accurate data and blood testing or using the sensor regularly. But it can be a very powerful weapon against diabetes when done correctly. This method allows me to follow the diet that I like. And when I say diet, I ran a weight loss center for years as well. Everyone's always, what's the best diet? The best diet is the one that works. Now, you set your goals, whether it's fitness, whether it's to trim off a few pounds before spring, whether it's athletic, you set those goals, and whatever diet gets you there safely and healthfully, then that's the diet that you want. So what I do for diabetes is sort of a combination of carnivore and low carb. So a lot of people like Dr. Bernstein did the carnivore diet. Richard Bernstein, over 80 years old, type 1 patient who's been on extremely low carbs, less than 30 or about 30 a day, and completely flat blood glucose lines. His A1C is beautiful. His stability is wonderful. And obviously he's over 80, so he's doing very well. So I'm sort of in that range. I'm not quite as low as 30. I aim for 75. Sometimes I hit 100. Sometimes I hit 50. And I'll explain why that's important and why it's important to allow yourself that variability. But that's my goal. So for today, for example, I worked overnight in the ED last night, and I see patients this afternoon. So today I started when I woke up around 10:30, just with some eggs and cheese. Did I have bacon? No, I didn't have bacon. I do a lot of bacon, but I find the eggs give me the satiety that I need. In fact, I feel like I may have eaten too much. I don't get the rapid spike in blood glucose. Typically, if I'm waking up with a good sugar, I don't have to worry about things from that endpoint. And we did talk about some of the phenomenon, such as Dawn phenomenon and feet on the floor phenomenon. This is the beauty of the 780G pump, is it can really help you with those things. So those, knock on wood, haven't been an issue for me. I frequently do eggs in the morning or early afternoon, depending on my schedule, which is extremely variable. And I will tell anyone, overnights, rotating schedule like that is difficult for anybody, especially those of us with type 1 diabetes. Anyway, that's my life. So I'm using the 780G pump. I'm trying to stay between 75 carbs, if not a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher. I'm blessed with that system that allows me to do that. I eat a ton of eggs. We probably go through 2 or 3 dozen in this family of 4 in 1 week. I cook with the eggs. I frequently have eggs in the morning or whatever my morning might be. Sometimes I'll even do it for dinner. I do a lot of hard-boiled eggs. It's a nice snack. It's easy. It fills you up. You throw a little hot sauce on it and it's perfect. Some people do balsamic vinegar on it, which they like. Whatever design styles that you learn. Instagram, Facebook are full of these ideas. Some of them are ridiculous. Some of them are excellent. But I encourage you to experiment with it. So this low-carb diet does a lot of things for me. It helps keep that sensor line, that glucose levels, nice and flat. Whenever you have processed food, so let's talk about processed foods. Essentially, a processed food is any food that's changed from its natural state. So you have your mildly processed food, and that's simply, I took the carrots out of the ground, I washed them off, I peeled them, and I chopped them. Maybe I froze them. Very minimal changes to the food itself, but they have been changed. Those have essentially no different impact on blood sugar than the carrot directly out of the ground. And then you have your moderately processed foods. So here we've added something to it. Maybe a little bit of oils, maybe a little bit of sugar. We see this with some of our breads, our crackers, some of the milder cereals, your cold meats, your hams, your roast beefs and that stuff. I won't even talk about bologna. But these are moderately processed. So they tend to have a little bit of a more gradual, stronger impact on blood glucose levels. Of course, naturally, you add sugars to something. Sugars equal carbs, carbs equal blood glucose. So that's where you run into issues there. The big problem that we have in our American diet is the highly processed or ultra-processed foods. I know on the internet we've been hearing a lot more about these, as we should, because these have a dramatic impact not only on blood glucose levels, but inflammation, weight gain, insulin resistance, the whole gambit. Cardiovascular status, they're just bad for us in every way. And unfortunately, a lot of times they taste great and they can be very addicting. So to be more specific, these are refined foods. We've removed fiber. We've changed the texture or the surface area of the foods. We've removed and or altered some of the nutrients in the food. Sugars have been added. Proteins may have been changed or added. Various fats and oils can be added and or changed. The result is you get more spikes, more irregular spikes, and more dramatic impact on blood sugar levels. Then let's we'll break everything down. Fiber, any fiber we know is good for us because it slows down that glucose absorption, it slows down that digestion. okay? A lot of times when they process foods, they remove the fiber. Particle size, so if this goes back to your, I guess it would be chemistry in high school, where the shape and size of the particle dictates the surface area exposure. The more you expose the surface area, or the more surface area there is to be digested, the more rapid this will break down and the more rapid you'll see a blood sugar spike. So as we process foods, we tend to increase the surface areas, causing faster digestion, causing faster rises in blood sugars. We see this when we take grains and mill them down to flour. So this is your white bread versus your grains and other types of bread. So rapid spike in blood glucose, more rapid digestion, more problems for us with diabetes. When we add refined sugars, like your high fructose corn syrup, can't be more evil words in the world than high fructose corn syrup. They're extremely easy to digest, so they're very fast and they spike the sugar dramatically. It used to be in the 80s, everyone would tell you there's no sugar added, but you'd see it's loaded with high fructose corn syrup. And of course, this is just marketing and advertising and playing on ignorance. Thankfully, that has started to improve. What else do we do? The different fats that we add, when we start adding seed oils and alter the fat and protein content, the more fat and protein in the product, the slower it will digest. So we think, oh, pizza, that's a good thing for us. Potentially, because the pizza will take a while to digest. However, there's so much refined carbohydrates and flours and whatnot in there that you have a much more dramatic impact on blood sugar. Where these are important ideas, as those of us with any form of diabetes, we're trying to match our insulin release or injection with the rise in blood sugar from whatever we ate. So if you eat a bowl of sugar, you're going to get a fairly quickly rapid rise in blood glucose, and therefore you probably should have taken a shot of insulin earlier. If you're on a pump with a sensor, of course, that's going to happen with it. If you're a type 2, then if you have the ability to make that insulin, and if you're sensitive enough to it, you'll be able to handle it with that bowl of sugar, but it's going to have a more dramatic impact on wearing down your pancreas and your ability to produce insulin. So for some of us for patients with type 2 diabetes or those on medications that help with the release of insulin, you may see a benefit or a lower blood glucose spike when you have something like a pizza, because it's got so much fat in it. Instead of the sugar going quick, the sugar goes up more gradually, kind of gives your body a chance to compensate for it. Again, the refined sugars in there tend to cause the sugar to go up much higher. So essentially, it's easier for your body to keep up with it, but it's a lot more work than your body should have to do, leading to further insulin resistance, degradation of the beta cells, and inability to produce insulin completely. So those are the main changes that we see in high processed foods or ultra processed foods. Essentially, we are taking foods, taking out the good stuff, exposing more surface area, adding some bad stuff, causing a more rapid or unpredictable spike in blood glucose, much higher. Those of you without diabetes, now your pancreas has to compensate for that and work a lot harder and potentially harder over time to avoid issues. The result of this is you wear down that ability to make insulin. So for those of us with type 2, lean more towards the low carbohydrate, low processed foods, and you'll find that you're able to avoid having to add multiple medications, avoid complications, and maintain a good hemoglobin A1C or glucose level. As you know, I'm a big supporter and proponent for the sensor. It works wonderfully. I don't care what type of diabetes you have or your provider thinks you have, go for a sensor. No matter what, you'll learn so much. It's really incredible stuff. Another topic I wanted to cover with this is the high glycemic index versus the low glycemic index. The high glycemics are your white rices, your sugary cereals. These cause these rapid spikes in blood sugar. Your low glycemic obviously are a little bit more natural, and we don't, more like your nuts, your lentils and things like that, the whole grains. We don't see that huge rise. It's a slow and steady rise, which is much easier for anybody without diabetes to keep up with. The reason I bring this up is processing foods tends to lean it all towards that high glycemic index. So how do you tell? How do I know what's processed and what's not, aside from the simple of, chopped carrots are lightly processed, candied, fried carrots are highly processed. The easy way in the grocery store, most grocery stores, if you stay on the periphery, you're going to be in the lower processed section. The more central you go, the more processed you get. And that, I've been watching this since I read about this about a couple of years ago. It tends to be true in most grocery stores that I go to. You tend to see the frozen foods tend to be towards the edges. Of course, most frozen foods, except for the pizzas and things like that, are in the lower processed ideology. Your vegetables, those tend to be on the outside ring of the periphery of the grocery store. So it tends to be your lower processes. When you get into the middle of the store, you've got your candied cereals, you've got your Pop-Tarts from hell, you've got your Twinkies that will never degrade. These are incredibly highly or ultra processed foods that can really cause major glycemic trouble. So back to me. Carnivore, low carb. So in other words, I'm not terribly strict. Why do I do that? Very simple. I'm out a lot. I have meetings, I have lunch meetings, I go out with friends. I don't want to be locked into a diet where it's incredibly difficult to order. Now, carnivore is not bad because most meals or most restaurants you go to, you can get some sort of steak or something and you just don't eat the other stuff. But you got to be strong enough to avoid that temptation. If you are, more power to you, and that's great. Eat up your steak, have a nice evening. But, if you're not, then, either ask them to not serve it, which some people don't like that exposure. They feel a little bit embarrassed asking for special meals. But please do, because certainly you're right, you're paying for the meal. But that's why I allow a little bit of carb variation. Also, an important thing with type 1 diabetes is this is an unpredictable disease. I don't care how good your sensory system is, it'll get you every now and then. So to have some carbs once in a while to treat a low sugar is 100% appropriate. I don't want to feel guilty because I went for a bike ride and I came back and I had a hard-boiled egg or two for lunch. And a couple hours later, I started to have a low because of that lag effect of the exercise. And anyone that's had a low with diabetes, you really don't feel like a piece of steak. You don't think you want a hard-boiled egg or scrambled eggs for that matter. That's where you're thinking, I want to have a nice glass of juice. I want to have something else that's going to have some high carb impact, 15 to 30 grams of carbs to get my sugar back where it needs to be quickly. So I use the more natural foods, the honeys and the maple syrups. I do use them when needed, but having that ideology that, okay, I'm going to be carnivore with a little bit of leeway for carbohydrates keeps me from feeling guilty. And I'm very much a perfectionist, so I want to avoid that guilt feeling. I recommend the same if you're at all like that. I just mentioned juice and it kind of reminded me, juices are incredibly processed. They're essentially evil. If you're going to give your child juice, please consider just go with the whole fruit. Give the orange, give the apple, give 2 apples. It's much healthier than the juice. Now, being from northern New York, I will allow a little bit of leeway for apple cider season. And you got to try to enjoy your cider. And yes, if I have a low and there's some cider in the fridge, I might have some. But I also stay with the local farms that produce it, so I know it's a lot safer for me. But I just wanted to bring that in there. The other thing that I try to incorporate into my diet is a period of fasting. So I try to make my morning meal, or I should say my first meal, because of my irregular schedule, I try to make that larger. Like this morning, I probably had 4 or 5 eggs with some feta cheese scrambled into it, a little bit of oregano, salt, and pepper. Made a great meal. I'm full. My plan is to probably not eat again until maybe a little bit of steak with dinner, but that will be it. So giving yourself long periods of fasting like that will put you into a mild ketosis or a nutritional ketosis. So I measure this. I no longer blood test because I'm using the sensor, but I do blood tests for the ketone levels. I check these most mornings. I like to run between 0.3 and 3, and that it puts me in a range where I'm burning fat. The reason I do that is the brain likes fat. We've talked about this before, how the brain does not need insulin to get to the glucose. It also enjoys ketones as a secondary energy source. So I like to give that to the brain. It's a more stable energy provider, the ketones. So you don't get the ups and downs that you experience with high carbs. I get more mental clarity and I tend to sleep better with that. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll check, maybe I'll be 0.8, maybe I'll be 1, maybe I'll be 0.4. I don't really judge myself on it. I just kind of want to make sure I'm in that range because that tells me I'm burning a little fat. the beauty of this is you lose some weight. I've lost about 18 pounds in the last, I think, 6 or 7 months of carnivore. And I have periods where I'm very strict with it and periods where I'm less strict. And I see that with the weight fluctuation, which is a good educator, a good reminder. But keeping that carnivore mentality with low carbs, so again, 50 to 75 is my goal, with occasional hitting 100, I do much better, much more mental clarity, better sleep, far better blood glucose levels, more stability for me. My A1Cs have been excellent. My triglycerides have gone down. My HDL has gone up. I don't get too bent out of shape about cholesterol. I feel energetic, and I love life with it. So that's my 2 cents on diet. That's what works for me. We're all different. We're all individuals. So, find what works with you, with your stress levels, your psychology, how you feel, your likes and dislikes of food. If you hate steak, carnivore is going to be tough. I do eat a lot of chicken, though. Definitely go through a lot of chicken, a lot of turkey, a lot of steak, and like I said, a ton of eggs. The other one thing I'll throw out there in the last couple of minutes is my morning coffee. I used to be a huge coffee person. I was a medical student, a resident, an ER doc. I think it's in our blood. I'm down to about a cup a day, excuse me, occasional 2. But that cup of coffee has some MCT oil. I recommend you look that one up because it does have a lot of benefits, both on the ketone level and the metabolism health level. And I put about a shot of apple cider vinegar. Again, blocks carbohydrate absorption, helps with blood sugar control, not so much in a type 1, but it does give a feeling of satiety. It's part of the reason I can have an egg or 2 in the morning and feel full for the whole day. I add that into my coffee, so it's diluted out, real simple, and that's my 1 cup of coffee for the day. I recommend you avoid energy drinks. They have a huge cardiovascular impact. They have a huge metabolic impact. I understand the drive behind them, but a lot of these things are just sugar bombs. So I recommend caution with that. I don't want to keep going on food, which I could forever and ever. There's a lot of great resources out there. I recommend Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who does a lot with insulin resistance in our diets and how to avoid getting ill. And he's not focusing on diabetes at all, so it is an excellent resource. He does lectures, and I think he probably has a YouTube channel, definitely has a couple of books out. But again, trial and error. Get on that sensor if you're not on it. There's lots of tricks to that, and maybe I'll do a video on ways to get by insurance, although it's been a little while, and they tend to change. But talk to your doctor. Find a way to get around your insurance company so that you can have that continuous glucose monitoring system. I love the Medtronic 780G pump, and they've got some upgrades in both their sensor and the pump technology that I'm looking forward to. Again, whatever pump works best for you, whatever you're comfortable with. I feel things like carnivore are safer when you have that sensor because you do need to make adjustments to your activity levels, to your glucose levels, and be ready for an occasional surprise. Now that I've been doing this for about 8 months, it's certainly far more stable and more comfortable. So please, check these out, find out what works for you. Get rid of those ultra-processed foods because they're not helping us at any level. I mean, from cardiovascular to diabetes to inflammatory, they're just a bad idea. And as always, have a great day and live healthy.